Welcome to the Lead Action Level Exceedance 24-hour Tier 1 Public Notice instructional video, which will walk you through the following. Why is this public notice required? How do you distribute your public notice? And how to certify its distribution. This video is brought to you by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Drinking Water Program, also known as the MassDEP DWP. This video is for Massachusetts community and non-transient, non-community public water systems that are regulated under the lead and copper rules. How is the public notice triggered? The 24-hour Tier 1 public notice is a new requirement under the lead and copper rule revisions, or LCRR, which became the compliant rule for public water systems on October 16th, 2024. On October 30th, 2024, the Lead and Copper Rule Improvements, or LCRI, were released, which pauses all but 3 of the LCRR requirements. The Tier 1 public notice requirement is one of the 3 requirements that remain in play. The Tier 1 24-hour public notice is triggered when a water system learns that they have exceeded the lead action level based on their 90th percentile value. The 90th percentile is calculated after a system collects the required number of samples on their approved sampling plan, and a certified laboratory has analyzed them for lead. In most cases, to calculate the 90th percentile, the system will organize the sample results from lowest to highest detection of lead and number the results accordingly, with the lowest lead sample value as 1. The system will then multiply the number of samples collected by 0.9, which will then give them the number of the sample that represents the 90th percentile. If that sample result is above the action level, which until November 2027, it remains at 0.015 milligrams per liter, or 15 parts per billion, the system has exceeded the action level. If that number is at or below the action level, the system has not exceeded the action level. If a system is only required to collect 5 samples, such as for very small systems, they will calculate the 90th percentile value by taking the average of the highest and second highest lead sample result, and will use that average to determine if there is a lead action level exceedance. Systems are considered to have learned of their lead action level exceedance as soon as they have calculated the 90th percentile value after collecting and receiving all their sample results, but not later than the end of their reporting period. Depending on the water system's monitoring period, the end of the reporting period may be July 10th, October 10th, or January 10th. Systems have the ability to calculate their 90th percentile as soon as they receive the last sample result from their certified laboratory, and are strongly encouraged to do so in the interest of protecting public health and alerting the public as soon as possible if there is an exceedance. As soon as a system learns that they have exceeded the lead 90th percentile, the public notice requirement is triggered, and the public water system has 24 hours to distribute their notice. This 24-hour time frame does not change if the system learns of the exceedance after regular business hours or on weekends. It is always 24 hours from the time the exceedance is identified. What needs to be included in your public notice? To meet LCRR requirements, your public notice needs to include the following information. What happened that you exceeded the action level? When the lead exceedance occurred? The mandatory health effects language, shown here. Whether alternative water supplies should be used. What actions consumers should take. What you are doing to address the lead exceedance. When you expect to resolve the lead exceedance. Contact information for your water system owner, operator, or designee. The mandatory statement on the screen to share the public notice with others. All of these requirements can be met by using the MassDEP Drinking Water Program Tier 1 Public Notice Template, which is available on the MassDEP Drinking Water Program Public Notification Forms and Templates webpage. Massachusetts systems are required to use a Tier 1 public notice approved by MassDEP. This template includes all required content. Mandatory language is shown in italics. Areas highlighted in yellow are for information specific to the water system and the 90th percentile lead value. Sections where text is only applicable to certain systems are highlighted in green, with instructions on what to do. Systems can change the unhighlighted and non-italicized text if needed, but are encouraged to leave it as written. If systems do need to change any unhighlighted and non-italicized text, that cannot undermine the message of the notice and must be approved by MassDEP prior to distribution. As you look through the Tier 1 public notice template, you'll notice that the template includes two versions. The short version is for methods of delivery like radio and television, methods based on speech, while the long version is appropriate for hand delivery and the newspaper notice, methods based on the written word. More information on approved delivery methods is available later in this video. MassDEP Drinking Water Program will also be releasing versions of the Tier 1 public notice for NTNC systems and small community systems serving only one or a few buildings, like apartments and condominiums. These templates will be featured on the MassDEP Drinking Water Program Public Notification Forms and Templates webpage. Getting your public notice ready for distribution. Systems are required to have their public notice approved by MassDEP in their regional office prior to distributing it, unless they are unable to get approval from MassDEP before the 24-hour deadline, such as if a system learns of their exceedance during the weekend. Systems should get in touch with their MassDEP regional office as soon as possible to begin this discussion and notify MassDEP of the exceedance. To do this, systems should contact their lead and copper regional MassDEP staff or call the 24-hour emergency phone number, which is 888-304-1133. Systems only have 24 hours to prepare their public notice, determine how it will be distributed, and have it approved by MassDEP and distribute it, which can be a lot of work in a short period of time. To make this process easier for systems, MassDEP Drinking Water Program is requiring systems, as of October 16, 2024, to have a drafted copy of their 24-hour Tier 1 Lead Action Level Exceedance public notice included in their emergency response plan, or ERP, which can be shared with MassDEP for review and for approval prior to distribution if a lead action level exceedance ever occurs. Systems should also plan how they will distribute their public notice and include that information in their ERP, along with any necessary contacts for distribution. If a system has a history of lead action level exceedances, or has seen recent lead 90th percentile values close to the action level, systems should discuss their drafted notice with MassDEP and have it pre-approved so that the system is prepared if an exceedance happens in the future. If a system needs approval from local officials, like a board or committee, getting this pre-approval in advance can also reduce the stress of needing to communicate with all necessary parties within the 24-hour period. Please note that if your notice is pre-approved, your PWS must still follow the practice of notifying MassDEP when you learn of a lead exceedance and have your drafted public notice approved for final distribution. Distributing the public notice. The public notice must be delivered in a way that is reasonably calculated to reach all persons served by the system, including residential, transient, and non-transient customers. If notices are printed or posted, they must be displayed in a prominent way. Systems must use one or more of the following methods to deliver the notice to consumers: radio, television, reverse 911, hand or direct delivery, posting in conspicuous locations, or an alternative method proposed to and approved by MassDEP. Please note that using local cable access television is not a sufficient method to meet this requirement. If systems are using television as their delivery method, they should be using the same broadcast media outlets that would be used for public health orders, such as boil water notices. In addition to one or more of the described methods, community water systems must publish the Tier 1 public notice within your local newspaper as a one-day advertisement, no later than 14 days after the exceedance. A copy of the newspaper notice must be submitted to MassDEP no later than the time published. Smaller community systems, like those serving an apartment building or condominium units, may be able to use a local newsletter for residents and renters, instead of a town newspaper. Make sure to discuss this with your regional office for approval prior to distribution. Steps to take after distributing your public notice. After your system has issued your public notice, your system must do the following. Within 24 hours of learning of the lead action level exceedance, send a copy of your finalized public notice to MassDEP and EPA by emailing it to the program.director-twp@mass.gov and the lead.ale@epa.gov email addresses. Please make sure to CC the regional staff members you've been in contact with. Within 10 days of finalizing all Tier 1 public notice required activities, community systems must certify that your notices were distributed and distributed on time by submitting the public notice certification form within 10 days after you have published the Tier 1 public notice within your local newspaper as a one-day advertisement. Non-transient non-community systems must certify that your notice was distributed and distributed on time by submitting the PN certification form within 10 days after issuing the public notice. This certification must be sent to your MassDEP regional office and your local Board of Health, along with the copies of the notices distributed. A hard copy of these documents must be delivered to your MassDEP regional office, but the PWS may choose to send in a second copy by email if preferred. The certification form is available on the MassDEP Public Notification Forms and Templates webpage. You should also notify healthcare professionals in the area of the lead action level exceedance. People may contact their doctors with questions, and by notifying healthcare professionals, they can prepare the information they need to respond appropriately ahead of time. And remember, systems also need to meet the public education requirements under the Lead and Copper Rule, or LCR. All LCR requirements are still in play, and systems need to meet LCR requirements to be compliant with Massachusetts drinking water regulations. Here are a few scenarios of water systems that would need to distribute the 24-hour public notice. Scenario 1. A system has a lead and copper monitoring period of January 1st to June 30th, with the reporting period ending on July 10th. This system is reviewing the results as they receive them and sees a trend where their 90th percentile value for lead is likely to exceed the lead action level. Due to this, while waiting on their last 3 results, they reach out to their MassDEP regional office with a draft Tier 1 public notice and ask the regional staff to review their public notice and plan distribution method ahead of time. The regional MassDEP staff review the notice that day and provide comments for corrections. The system is able to resolve all comments, run their notice by their select board for approval, and resend their updated notice to MassDEP for review. The MassDEP regional staff member reviews the notice and provides pre-approval. When the system receives their last result the following week, they determine that they have exceeded the lead action level as predicted. They immediately calculate the 90th percentile and finalize their pre-approved notice. They send it to their MassDEP regional office for final approval, along with a distribution plan previously discussed. MassDEP provides final approval, and the water system distributes their notice with plenty of time left. Scenario 2. A water system is required to collect lead and copper samples during the July 1st to December 31st monitoring period, with the reporting period ending on January 10th. For this scenario, let's assume that January 10th is a Sunday, and the system sent samples to the lab for analysis near the end of the monitoring period. They received their last sampling result on Friday, January 8th at 3 p.m., 2 days before the reporting deadline. The system must report their 90th percentile to MassDEP by Sunday, January 10th, by submitting Form LCRD or LCRE to be compliant. The system immediately calculates their 90th percentile and discovers that they have exceeded the lead action level with a lead 90th percentile value of 18 parts per billion. The system immediately attempts to contact their MassDEP LCR regional contact. If unable to reach the LCR regional contact, and calling MassDEP's 24-hour emergency phone number is appropriate. This system will have limited time during regular business hours to work with their MassDEP regional staff to make sure their notice and method of distribution is approved, but they must still carry out this distribution within the 24-hour time frame. Even if the system does not receive approval of their notice from MassDEP, they must finalize a notice that meets all MassDEP DWP requirements and distribute it using the appropriate method within 24 hours. Thank you for watching.